And so this week I'm talking about Middle Eastern multicultural children's literature. So it gets kind of confusing. What is the Middle East? It's a lot of stuff, right? A lot of countries and a lot of definitions of what is considered Middle Eastern. So just grabbing a few things for hopefully for some clarification. Arabs constitute the majority ethnic group in all of the Middle East states except Iran, Israel, and Turkey. Originally, the term Arab referred to the peoples that inhabited the north and central portions of the Arabian Peninsula. So we get Arab and we get Middle Eastern kind of tossed and turned back and forth, and there's some distinctions, and it can get confusing. I'm just going to let you read this. So a lot of territory out there is considered Middle Eastern and or Arab. So as we come back into our territory of the United States, and we're looking specifically at what is positively represented in our for our children of our United States. This article, and it's the one that you have, as well as there's a lot to be said about the lack of representation. Many Arab American students do not have classroom experiences that expose them to a story that reaffirms their cultural identity as Arabs or that validates the importance of their cultural heritage to students from other cultures. So it's again that whole windows and mirror thing, right? They're not reflected in their culture here in the U.S. a lot of times via the literature and media, and they're not reflected or highlighted, showcased, and therefore the whole idea of the windows, other cultures don't get to glean all the wonderfulness of this culture because we're not exposed to much of it. Or what we're exposed to, obviously, it's what I'm going to talk about a little bit, is more stereotypical stuff. And here's one of them, Mickey in Arabia. And it's just old Mickey Mouse cartoon, which still is a big part of our culture. Disney kind of dictates a lot of stereotypes, right? The harmful influences of stereotypes depend not only on the let me start over. Geez, and I got distracted because Jupiter's groaning in the background because she's so bored. The harmful influence of stereotypes depend not only on the repetition of distorted imagery, but also the omission of diverse imagery. So what is absent in American popular culture are, real images of Arabs and Arab Americans and Middle Easterners, like not just the stereotypes, right? So it's that whole erasure thing, right? If we don't include them, then that also diminishes the culture because we're not seeing the culture. We're seeing stereotypes and we're not seeing anything else. So just like regular people, right? Business owners, family members, teachers, classmates, artists, engineers, neighbors, and other people who've contributed to society. We can have all the bad guys in the movies and stuff, but we got to again have the good guys and girls. So Aladdin is old, right? It's been out for a while, this Aladdin movie, but it's still a really great perpetuator of Middle Eastern Arab stereotypes. And the live action one, that's the big deal that Disney's doing with all their movies right now. Their animated movies. Lion King with Beyonce, come on, right? And then the Little Mermaid, talked about that one. So some cool live action, interesting things are happening. So when they announced the whole Aladdin live action thing, at first, you might have read about it, maybe not, but it's out there that they were auditioning actors, female and male actors that weren't even Middle Eastern. They're doing white people, and come on, haven't you learned Disney? So they kind of backtracked on that and regrouped. But this movie has a lot to be disturbed about. Even though the protagonists are Arabs, right? but light-skinned lead characters, anglicized features. So Jasmine looks, her skin's pretty light there. Not to say there aren't variances of skin color in all cultures. Anglo-American accents, even though they're not even, it's not portrayed over here, right? They should have at least an accent that is applicable to the country they're in. And then the really kind of awful part is, which reminds me of the Peter Pan movie, when they had the American Indians just so, like this, exaggerated, right? And grotesque, just like awful features. Well, in Aladdin, similar kind of thing. So besides the main characters, everybody else is pretty exaggerated in features and pretty dark skin tones to denote their evilness. So I just came across some of the stereotypes found in the movie. Eroticized women, 19%. Barbaric, 7%. Swarthy, 7%. Villain, 7%. Ignorant, 7%. Negative perception of women, 19%. Does that count the eroticized too? Dehumanization, 7%. Generalizing, stereotyping, right? 50%. So just pretty negative stuff. So this is what this blog said that I thought was interesting. Aladdin is a white fantasy, and that's hardly surprising because the film is basically some white guy's foggy notion of the Orient. It's most likely a made-up story added to a translation of 1001 Nights by a French guy in the 18th century, directed by white guys. The 1992 movie was written by them and other white guys. Its cast featured not even one Arab or South Asian voice actor. So, wow. So they're trying to get it right, a little more correct with the live action version after they were lambasted for going down the road of not hiring Arab or South Asian voice actors. I mean, real actors, live actors. So to characterize an entire region with this sort of tongue-in-cheek bigotry, especially in a movie aimed at children, borders on barbaric. I like that quote, so I just had to get it. So, I mean, this is a movie directed to children and still watched. Again, I'm using movies as examples, kind of tying them in with books, but stuff is out there still in the hands or the eyes of children, right? And this is definitely one of them. So another thing that I've talked about in other cultures is the idea that the only thing we have to show for that culture are all things that are way back in the day, right? Just the folk tales, the myths, and all those are really important things. But like I was saying in the Asian American lectures, that there are important things, but if kids only see that, then the culture isn't real, right? It's like that whole Frozen time, they're just way back, and it's just not real stuff. It's just kind of lyrical and fantastical, and it's just not here. Folk tales are a really great source of helping to convey the culture, but we've got to have contemporary stuff for young children for sure, so they get the idea that these people are real. So again, important tales. But we don't want that to be the only tale that is delivered. Until fairly recently, that was the major tale that was delivered in our culture anyway, was things from way back, and exciting stories, but we need more than just that single story. So I just came across this today, so that was kind of fun. I love the blog. It's really cool. And there was an interview with the author of this children's book, which is a really cute book. I actually happen to have it, so that was kind of fun for me to see that. And they asked her a couple of questions like, what was your experience as a child looking at children's books? And she said, one thing I didn't see when I was growing up were books about Muslims. It was just not something that I saw at all. So this is a February of this year interview with, this is her book. cute kid. For me, I really do write for Muslim kids, especially Black Muslim kids. I'm just hoping that they have books, that I can give them more books, that they can see themselves as worthy, as being celebrated, that our stories are worth being told. And a lot of times kids may not feel like their stories are worth being told or as important as people from mainstream and dominant culture, because all the stories seem to be about them. Persistent theme here, right? I'm just hoping that they have books, that they can see themselves as worthy. That just a really persistent theme about all the cultures we've been talking about. She says, when I think back to when I was a little girl and I wanted to be a writer then, and I was writing a lot of stories about white kids, because what I was reading in books was white kids. They were never Muslim, because that was not what was happening in books, right? And it was very important for me to have our books, and not only in Muslim shops, but also in the public library, at Barnes and Nobles, and those places, to kind of say, you know what? This is an acceptable identity, and your story is worth being told. So that's really the hope with the writing that I do, that our kids see themselves there. And you know, the book is a window, and I do want to let other people in to see this culture and to appreciate it as well. Again, there's our persistent theme that, yeah, I'm doing that. I mean, Grace Lynn in the TED Talk also said the same thing, that when she first started illustrating her books, she was just drawing only white characters until her teacher said, like, what's with that? So that was just a big aha moment for her, for sure. But it's just so important. I love that I came across this today. I think it just so ties in to what we're talking about in this class. So when using high quality Arab children's literature, Arab children, American children, have an opportunity to, again, explore, share, and express pride in their culture and the literature of their people. Just can't say that quote enough. We got to have it. I'm just kind of hammering it in a lot, aren't I? Sorry. So this is an interesting book, and so I have that link. So we've got some better books coming up. They're not just only Arabian Night and stereotypical stuff, or just, you know, shallow stuff. Some of the books that had preceded some of these better Middle Eastern books for children. It's just an interesting, beautifully illustrated story. So that's there if you want to see it. This is a really great one. I love this. Love this one. And it's just interesting to think that, yeah, so, you know, your parents immigrate from another country and have cultures that their children get a little taste of, but not necessarily all of it, right? Because they're born here and kind of getting into the U.S. vibe culture, not only from the homeland kind of culture, and just some of the conflicts about that. And this is just a really cute book about this kid wanting to go to a birthday party without her annoying little sister. So check that one out. It's just fun. So I think this is important, and maybe this is where I'm going with the final exam question, right? So is that what's missing in images that Americans receive from and about the Middle East is a realistic and humanistic portrayal of a people and their culture as told from an indigenous perspective. So we have so many stereotypes of Middle Easterners, right? I mean, from 9/11 on, if you were here for that, and I mean, just some really awful stereotypical things that continue. Like 2 days ago, right? Send her back. So we have an Arab American that is it's suggested that she needs to go back from where she came. An elected representative of our Congress, like, send him back. So that's what I think I'm going to focus on, is that at how can better children's literature, better children's lit, help counter really negative images, that negative portrayals or ideas of this group, right? Middle Eastern. I mean, last year I would have had as my political commentary, the Muslim ban and what the impact of that. I mean, in my class, when there was the whole, Muslim ban and people couldn't travel back and forth to this country, I mean, there was a lot of my students had some horrific stories to tell about how that impacted their family and them personally. So how do we counter that? Ethnic stereotypes, especially harmful. An absence of positive. Okay, so that's I think that this really rings true more for the Middle Eastern children's books. I mean, it rings true for all of them, but we have a lot of negative, I'm writing some of this stuff down. We have a lot of negative stereotypes of Middle Eastern cultures, right? And we don't have enough positive images. And we're getting better with the children's books, but something on that. It's really important. And so this is an interesting guy, Jack Shaheen, I don't know how to say it. To paraphrase Plato, those who tell the stories rule society. It's like ties back into the whole thing of the danger of a single story. So what he's done is collected an archive of all the terrorist movies, right? Every terrorist and every evil person in a movie for a really long time, all Middle Easterners, right? Well, how did we get away with that for so long? Still happening, right? So he's done this whole archive of things, and then he donated it to a library. So I have that link if you want to look at that. It's kind of interesting in some of the commentary and the importance of having like really tangible stuff, movies and books and posters, and for people to come and kind of realize how far and how big the impact of negative stereotypes of Middle Eastern culture in our society specifically. So check that out. Same question. Same answer. Same quote. Quality multicultural literature provides an opportunity for all children to see themselves in books, fosters a positive self-esteem, and cultivates respect, empathy, and acceptance of people. We could use a little more of that right now. So, good books. So important books. And you know what? Another thing, when I talked about that, a lot of times we just convey books of the myths and folktales from way back. And remember that whole tourist approach, foods and festivals approach, is that we don't only want to do holidays. And for Middle Eastern, that's happened a lot too. We don't want to just highlight that. We want real stories of now. So this is the TED Talk that I will be asking you to watch. I think it's about 20 minutes long, and there'll just be a question or two for the final exam for that. So that's the end of this lecture, and Jupiter is leaving the room. Gosh, maybe she's so smart she knows that, yeah, we're heading out of here. So thanks for listening, and apologize for stumbling along, but I've just kind of decided that I'm not interested in having this toucan that, like, if I was doing a live lecture, it's not like I could rewind, right, and start over. So that's kind of my newer approach. So hope that is not too annoying to you. So take it easy, and I'll be talking to you soon. Thanks for listening. Hey, Jupiter.